Hello, everyone. I'm just going to give another minute for people to join and then we'll get started. Okay, I think that's about a minute. Ready to kick it off. Okay, thank you everyone for joining today. We're so excited to be here. I'm Sarah Slagle. I work with the Speedgoat team and for UTMB. And I would love to firstly shout out to Elena here on the call. She's going to be leading this webinar for us, and we're so excited for her to be here. She is going to talk about this Speedgoat 50k course and how to conquer it on race day. She's an ultra marathoner and a coach, and she comes with a wealth of experience and is going to tell us all about her previous two races at Speedgoat. And we also have Harriet on this call, who is an interpreter. So that is really awesome. And I will pin both of those ladies to the top so that you can see them. And yeah, so I'm just super grateful for everyone for joining. And we will post this if you want to listen again or any of the pro tips you forgot, you can go listen. We will send it out on our socials, the link to watch the recording. And hopefully we'll see you all on race day. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and shoot it over to Elena to take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I hope everyone can see my screen, right? Sarah, can you just confirm that the slides are still good? Okay, great. And I get fireworks for doing thumbs up, so that's fun. Okay, awesome. So welcome everyone to this webinar. I will be talking about the Speedgoat 50k course. I'm super excited for everyone doing this race. You probably already know that it's a pretty hard race, but I think that also means that it's very rewarding as well. So let's get into it. First, quick intro. I'm Elena Horton. I live here in Salt Lake City. I love Little Cottonwood Canyon. I actually got to grow up skiing at Alta and Snowbird. So it's fun if you kind of are familiar with the Snowbird Mountain already from skiing. I also will try to put the course on the Snowbird map so you can understand it a bit more if you're familiar with skiing. I find that an easier way to interpret the course. I am a semi-pro trail runner with the Green Racing Project. I grew up a hockey player, got into running post-college, and have really now focused on longer distances like 100K and beyond. But I was joking with some friends earlier that the Speedgoat 50K kind of feels like a longer distance because it's a long race out there with the time that you will spend on course with all the climbing. But it's a really fun race in the same way, and I've run it twice. It was actually my first trail DNF ever. When I moved out to Utah, I raced it that same weekend and was unprepared for some of the parts of this course. So hopefully I will talk through some things to help you feel a bit more prepared as you tackle this course. When I'm not running, I am a technical consultant. I coach other runners. I co-host a podcast called The Endurance Drive, and I'm actually currently building Coralta, which is a healthcare hub for female athletes. If you have any interest in checking that out, you can always email me at the email below. Let's get into the course. So I plan to cover a few things in addition to the course, actually. So definitely talk about the course phase by phase and some notes that I have from my experience there, both racing it and coaching athletes through it. I will talk a little bit on the UTMB qualification system because I know that some people have asked some questions on that in the past, and that was raised as a topic of interest. So I'll talk a little bit about that and how Speedgoat fits into that to get you to the finals in Chamonix if you're interested in that goal. I will also talk a bit about the preparation around racing a course like this. So how I think about race planning, plotting out the course, planning your fueling and hydration, etc. And as part of that, I'll talk about mental prep for a hard course like this, and then we'll kind of wrap up and I'll take questions. Also, if anyone has questions throughout, I certainly don't mind at all being interrupted. I would love to have a conversation with it. So feel free to interrupt with questions, or I believe you can put them in the chat as well. And Sarah can maybe flag me if there's a good question that I should pause and take. But I'll take questions at the end too, and I'll pause a couple times. Awesome. Okay, so first things first, I don't think this is new to anyone, but quick overview of the terrain of the course. It's a little over a 50k, so expect your watch to maybe hit 31.2 a little bit sooner than the finish. It's 11,400 feet of climbing. It's also a high elevation race, so it's between 8,000 and 11,000 feet. And there's a 13-hour total cutoff. It starts at 6:30 a.m. and you have to finish by 7:30 p.m. And there's a few hard cutoffs at aid stations along the way. So I think at a high level, just know that this course is not what I would consider a very runnable 50K. There are certainly lots of points where you can run and will be running, but there's a lot of power hiking, even for the fastest competitors with some of this terrain. And because of the high altitude and the mountain nature of it, altitude's a factor and heat can be a factor. It's a little bit exposed. It'll be cooler than the valley for sure, but I've both times I've done it, it's been like 80-degree days. So we don't know the weather yet, but it's usually a little bit hotter. I think with that, just pacing and preparation for knowing how you're approaching fueling and hydration throughout this is really, really helpful. So that's really my main goal is to help you get a better sense of that. All right, getting into the course. This is what you'll see on the UTMB site. I think these maps are really cool, and everyone can look at this and see kind of just the shape of it and where the aid stations are. One thing I think that's funny about these maps is that I will often look at them for many races, including Speedgoat, and be like, wow, that doesn't look so bad. So a good reminder is that this is a mountain. It's a very steep mountain. And there's some pros and cons with that. The pros being that it's beautiful. There are really amazing views, and I hope you soak that in. And there's really good energy for spectating. People can take the tram up and go to the top of Hidden Peak, and you can have great crew support. The cons of that is that it's a little bit steeper and it's a little bit dusty and exposed on some of these mountain roads that you'll be running. Um, so Hidden Peak, the first section I'll break down is the first, I would say, third of the race. It's 9.2 miles from the start to the top of Hidden Peak. I would say there's like three notable climbs and descents on the way up, so it's not like you're going just straight up the whole time. It kind of meanders around the mountain. So this drawing I have is not like a perfect representation, but it's pretty close of where you go if you're like familiar with the Speedgoat or with the Snowbird Mountain. And when you start, you actually will start on a bit of a descent. This will mean that people go out pretty quick. And I would say if you're someone who is really wanting to PR or push it, it's not a bad idea to get a little bit of speed on this section just because it can get a little bit tight in the switchbacks when you do get to that point, and it can, so you might find yourself having a little bit of like a line to get into some of those switchbacks. However, there is plenty of time before that, and I would also encourage people to just let themselves settle in this section. People will go out hard, and you really want to let your legs warm up before you get to this climb. The first climb is after you run this kind of like descent down to the Gad Valley, and then you start climbing on a service road up the Gad Valley a little bit before dropping into these switchbacks and then traversing back across the mountain and then climbing a steeper set of switchbacks to then traverse back across the mountain. And that's the first 4 miles. There is an aid station 4.2 miles into the race, and there's hydration and fuel. And I would also encourage people to take advantage of that hydration early on. A lot of people want to like buzz right by it. And if you are solid on your plan, totally get it. But I think it's a really good opportunity to make sure that you're still taking care of yourself because this first climb can sneak up on you in terms of how long it can take with how steep it is. There's another note that I want to make, which is that the climb then from that first aid station will rise all the way up to the top of GAD 2 lift. And it looks a little bit like not that bad, but it's a pretty steep descent. It's a quick descent. It's not that long, but it's steep from GAD 2 down to the base of Little Cloud lift. And so yeah, that's also the same descent that you will then ascend on your return. So this is basically the same as the final descent with the exception of this kind of far like loop out to the Peruvian Gulch. And then you climb up to Hidden Peak, which is really exciting actually, because once you kind of get up this kind of a technical, sometimes it's snowy, but this year I don't think it'll be snowy. Everyone knows that we haven't had much snow this winter. So it'll be this kind of like shale, exposed rock, steep, very steep climb up to the top. And then you take this service road all the way up to Hidden Peak. And that's when you'll probably see your crew. It's a big aid station. There's tons of people there. Really would encourage you to make sure you're good on your fueling plan. You have a plan with your crew of what you're getting at that point. And also it's a good opportunity to like dunk yourself in water or have an ice bandana or something like that because you're about to go into the descent, which gets you to the lowest part of the course, and the heat will probably start picking up by then. So I would break down this section as like a very important section and just know that it's three rolling hills. It's not just straight up. And it's important to find your rhythm and not just burn yourself out on this climb, because I guarantee you a lot of people will go out a lot harder than the pace that they will be able to maintain. So check yourself, check your pacing, check your plan, run your own race, and know that you're going to have these like rolling kind of ups and downs until you get to the very top. All right. Any questions so far on the first
Elena,
section?
there is a message in the chat. If you want to address it now, that's fine,
Oh,
or you
great.
can do
Okay. I
yeah.
actually can't see the chat with
Okay.
my presentation. Do
I'm
you mind
happy
reading
to
it to me?
read the question. Sure. Yeah. Can you please comment on similarities and differences between this course and the 30K?
Oh, okay. Great question. So I am not one. I'm remembering the 30K, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost positive, like I put 90% sure that the 30K will only stay on the front side of the mountain. So it's basically the same. This part would be the same, and instead of going down the backside, which I'm about to talk about for the 50K runners, you will drop down the front side of the mountain. I think you maybe drop down the tunnel, come through the tunnel, and then do the cirque in the same way that we'll talk about that in the finish. But basically, the next section, then the descent into the American Fork Canyon and Mineral Basin, won't apply to the 30K runners. It will apply to the 50K runners. Okay, I'll move on, and then as any questions come up, I'll check again for those in a bit. The next section is this backside of the mountain. So this is not on, you'll leave basically Snowbird Mountain terrain, and you'll descend off the top of Hidden Peak, which is up in this corner over here. And you have this kind of like long, I think it's, yeah, over almost 4,000 feet of descending down to the lowest point in American Fork Canyon. A couple notes on this descent. Like pretty much everything on this course, it's not a full descent. There are going to be a couple kind of steep uphill sections, but they are pretty short. So just know that those are going to be there in case they're surprising you. It's just nice to mentally know, yep, I will have to go uphill again. It's not long, but it is there. And then the other thing to note is that while the first part I think is a really nice flowy section, a large part of this descent is in this drainage, and it ends up being kind of like in the drainage stream bed itself. So it's a bit more technical than you might expect. If you haven't run that terrain before, it might just be a little bit surprising. It's a really an area just to watch your footing, and you can still certainly move on it. It's just a place where I've seen people, especially as they're already fatiguing, have some falls or like hurt their knees or trip on their ankles, because it's just a bit of a more technical descent than you might otherwise expect. And then also I just find that this bottom point right here, there is apparently an aid station there where there's water. There hasn't been in the past, so it does say it's there. I just want to make sure that people would know that like it's a pretty long way to get to a actual full aid station. You go from Hidden Peak, you go all the way down. There's like supposedly a water aid station at the bottom of this canyon, and then there's another one that's water only at Water Pipe. And the next full aid station is Mineral Basin, and that's just a long time to go. So that's why it's really, really important to have your plan for fuel in particular, and make sure your crew gives you enough fuel at Hidden Peak to get you all the way to Mineral Basin, because there will not be a full aid station with fuel between those 2 points. Another important thing to note on this section is that it is, like I said, it gets hot down at this point. So it's a good opportunity if you see water. There's like you're by the stream bed. I think there was a little bit of water down here. Just dunk your hat in it too. Like take advantage of opportunities to cool at that point, just because it'll start warming up and you'll really feel it at that point in the race. A next section is just the climb out of it. So now you're at the bottom of the canyon. You have to climb back up, back into the Snowbird Resort on the Mineral Basin side. This climb, I actually think is really kind of fun. It's not, I mean, it's tough because it's a climb, but it's steadier and smoother than the front face of the mountain. I think it's a good opportunity to push yourself. You can kind of alternate between a little bit of running and a little bit of hiking, depending on the terrain. And it's also a little bit shaded, which is nice. So it might be a little hotter because you're lower, but it is covered with some trees, which can be super, super helpful. And you'll do about a 3 mile climb to get to Water Pipe, which literally is a water pipe. If you haven't seen it before, it's just a pipe that has water coming out of it, and you can drink water from it. And they also will probably have knack products there. That's what they had in the past, at least. It just doesn't have food. And so that's a really nice way to break it up. And then after water pipe, there is a much steeper section, although it's short, a short, steep punch to get up to the ridge before you drop down into Mineral Basin. And then you're at Mineral Basin, which is a really great marking point too. It's just exciting to be there, and you kind of know that you just did like that long section where you kind of go without people for a little bit, without aid stations. So it's nice to get to Mineral Basin and get food, regroup before you have the biggest push up to Mount Baldy. All right, next section, Mineral Basin to Tunnel. So this is, again, a loose map using the Snowbird mountain map, if you're familiar with it. So you would kind of come out from the American Canyon side, you drop down the ridge, come around to the bottom of Mineral Basin Lift, and then you end up after that aid station right there at the base of Mineral Basin Lift. You'll start climbing on the Baldy Lift side, and that's a pretty nice climb as well. And there'll be wildflowers. It should be really pretty. Hopefully, you're in a good headspace, knowing that you just got fueled up and you're coming back to the front side of the mountain after this. This, though, is the biggest climb, and one thing I want to call out in this section is that you will climb up to that ridge line, and you can see the ridge up to Mount Baldy, but you will actually descend a little bit before going back up a very steep pitch to the summit of Mount Baldy. And I find that this steep pitch will always surprise people, just because it is quite steep, and it just feels very long. And it is, like I won't lie to you. It's like probably a hard part of the course. However, I also know that every summit has a top and you'll get there. And the best part of this one is that Mount Baldy is a beautiful summit. And once you get up there, you will feel like you're kind of like on top of the world with the race. It's the high point of the course. And you get a really nice ridge descent from Mount Baldy down the ridge back to near Hidden Peak. You don't actually go up to Hidden Peak, but you'll kind of come down to the Peruvian tunnel. And then you'll go through the tunnel, and there's another aid station there. So while it's a big climb, it's not so far in terms of distance between your Mineral Basin aid station and your tunnel aid station, and you can see your crew at the tunnel aid station. So that's also really motivating and exciting to think about seeing your crew when you get there. Also, the tunnel will probably feel really great because it's shaded, and it's a nice relief from the sun for like 30 seconds. Um, all right, next section. This is the final big climb, and this is what gets people. And now for the 30K question, we're back to this. So this would probably be also part of the 30K course now. You're on the front side of the mountain again. You come through the tunnel from the back side of the mountain. You do probably the fastest descent, one of the fastest descents of the day on a service road, halfway down the mountain in the Peruvian Gulch. And then you'll start going back up on the cirque. And for anyone that's seen kind of some footage of this course or any photography, I feel like this is one of the most iconic views, is seeing someone going up the cirque, big mountain behind them. It's a pretty cool ridge to be on. It's definitely steep, but I have found that it looks a lot more intimidating than it actually is. And I would also tell you that at this point in the race, your body and your mind are so used to the idea of climbing that it's just another climb and you can totally get it done. And it's the last big climb for before you have this long descent down to the finish. So, yes, it's a scary climb. I think it's where people get really intimidated. At least it has been for people that I've coached in the past, and they will all say that it wasn't as bad as they thought it was. So I hope that everyone else can have that experience as well, because it is a big but fun climb. And then you'll get back up to Hidden Peak. And yeah, this is another 2.5 mile segment. Again, a lot of climbing, but you'll see your crew again at the top of Hidden Peak. So you can see them at Tunnel and you can see them at Hidden Peak, which is really great. So you can take it just piece by piece. They can fuel you up again. I also would encourage you to make sure that you do still cool and fuel up and get water hydration at both of these aid stations. I think some people think that they get to the top and it's like, cool, I'm descending all the way down now and I don't need to take care of myself as much anymore. But I've seen people burn up because of that, especially late in the race with all the ups and downs. It's a really common thing for people to start cramping pretty badly with the changing ups and downs at this point. So just make sure that you take the opportunity to take some like ice around your neck or dunk yourself in water, have electrolytes, make sure you take the fuel, you're on your fueling plan still for the final part of the race. All right, and then the last piece here on the course breakdown is the final descent. So this is the final descent generally on the course. You will basically descend, like I said, the same way that you ascended the mountain, with the exception of you don't do this big, long out and back on the Peruvian goat side. So you'll stay totally to the right of the gondola. One thing that's noteworthy though is that the little bump, like what I said was the steep descent on the way down from Gad to Little Cloud, is now your steep ascent on the way back. So this can get people, is that you think that you're descending the entire way, but actually there's this, pretty notable three to 400 foot climb. Again, you'll get through the climb, just keep chugging along, but it can be a little bit mentally annoying to know that you still have this climb to hit. You'll get up that top though, and then you will do a descent on a service road that is pretty fast. So I think that this descent is actually really fun. It's just that you're probably pretty tired at this point in the race, and your legs might be fighting you. So a couple notes on cramping. One, make sure you're taking electrolytes. I had a strategy racing, and I did this in a lot of races now, of like whenever I'm cramping, I just take salt pills no matter what. But also, and this can be a little bit mentally harder, but if you start cramping in your legs, sometimes I just find like fight through and start running again. Just get into your normal running stride, and it will hurt for the first few strides, but your body can typically adjust and get through it. I think that's really common in this section because of the ups and downs. Like your body is just struggling to switch from one type of movement to the other at this point. So be kind to yourself, but you can definitely get down it. It's just that it's a bit variable because those same three up and downs, you have like kind of like two of them on the way down. So you'll have a couple of these uphills. Then it's pretty fast after that. You'll still hit that aid station. The same aid station that was there at the 4.2 mile mark is there for you at the end, but it's like probably like less than 2 miles from the finish. So I would say this one you're okay to breeze by if you want to, but it's nice to know it's there to get some extra fuel or hydration if you need it. And then you can whip down the switchbacks and happily cross the finish line, and then celebrate and take care of yourself and know that you just conquered one of the hardest courses in certainly the country, maybe the world. I used this race as a training race for UTMB, and I found it to be yeah, perfect for that because of how much climbing it is, and it's really a rewarding course despite the climbing and the challenge. So I'll stop there quickly for any course-specific questions, and then I can go into a couple other thoughts on preparation for this course. Anything else in the chat?
Yes, there is a question on where most people DNF in this race.
Oh, great question. Okay.
Um, yeah, I would love your answer, and then I'm also happy to tell you guys what I think from all of the data that we have. I have a kind of idea.
Okay, great. Sarah, I would love to hear what the actual data says. I have two thoughts on it. I would say mineral basin. Mineral basin's quite common for one, I would say two reasons. One, the chairlift is right there, and you know that you could take the chairlift up to Hidden Peak and then take the gondola down, so you just know there's a very easy exit. And then people feel it because at that point you're about 20 miles into the race. You've done this huge climb up Hidden Peak. You've done the huge descent. You're feeling the heat, and then you climbed up from Mineral Basin, and you're looking at okay, I have still 10 plus miles in this race, and I'm climbing Mount Baldy and the Cirque. How can I possibly do this? So I think that's a common place to do it. My response to that is that there's certainly very valid reasons to DNF. I'm not anti-DNFing, but I mean, I did it. I actually DNF'd myself at Mineral Basin, which is pretty hilarious when I first did it. But don't think too much about the future of the race. Just stay where you are at any moment, and you can just keep chugging along. So that's my first thought, is just like, don't worry about what's coming. But typically while people will DNF there is because their fueling or hydration or their heat hasn't caught up to what they're doing. And at that point in the race, you start feeling it. So if you are on top of your fueling, on top of your hydration and managing your heat, I think you'll be totally fine. It's just that that's the first place where people who have been suffering for a long time have the opportunity to DNF, and that's why it's really common. Other than that, I would also probably say that like the tunnel coming through after Baldy, if they're really struggling, is similar, where they can just like get up to Hidden Peak and come down. But I feel like if they climb the Cirque, then people know that they can get down the mountain to finish. But Sarah, what does the data say? If you have
Yeah,
any other thoughts on that?
you pretty much nailed it for Mineral Basin. Like everything, you covered it all. The only thing I would add is like the elevation gets people sometimes. They make them sick. So that's something to
Yes.
really, yeah.
Yep.
I know it's a hard one, not it's hard to prepare if you don't live at 8,000 feet.
Yeah, that
But
was
yeah,
actually what
just
really got me, because I
yeah.
had just moved here from the East Coast, like that 2 days beforehand. So the elevation really got me. A couple thoughts on that now, having experienced that and coached people through it. If you're able to, if you can get up to 8,000 feet the day before the race or 2 days before the race and do a few like 30-second minute pushes with full recovery, something about getting your heart going, your cardio going at that elevation can trigger a little bit of adaptation to it. So that's one idea. And then this is more common science at this point. But if, and so, I mean, we still have time before the race, but exposing yourself to heat, like saunas, before that is another good way to kind of, it's not perfect, but it's a similar adaptation to what you would get if you were working at altitude. So some ideas to maybe help if you're not living in altitude, but it's just a reality of the course that it's at high altitude.
And then the only other ones, you nailed it again, Baldy Summit and Cirque.
Yeah.
It's just
There's not an aid station there though, so I'm not sure people
yeah,
can maybe just like walk down the mountain and call in and say like, hey, I didn't do
yeah. So I would
it.
say those are also kind of like what you said, like soft DNFs where people are like underfueled, exhausted, just don't meet the
hmm
time cutoff, something like that there. And then also I think Peruvian Gulch can be another point where people get burnt. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Proving Gulch on the ascent in the beginning or the
Uh,
descent?
The descent.
Oh, the descent. Okay, got
So
it. Yeah,
yeah,
come
like
before
a
you go up the
little
cirque. Yeah,
further.
they're looking
Yeah.
at going up the cirque and they're like, no, I'm not doing that
No,
again.
yeah,
Again, it's maybe
exactly.
that's more mentally because it's not, you'll get through it. It's not as bad as you think, maybe.
Yeah, perfect. And then we
Um,
have some follow-up questions on that question, actually.
Great. Okay.
Um, Helen said she just did the Temp Summit and thought it was super technical and hard. So how would that compare to this course, if you know?
Okay, interesting. I actually sadly have not done the TIMP summit yet. I can compare to a few other ones that might be helpful. Like if you're running in Big Cottonwood Canyon, you do Gobbler's Knob, or if you are have done Mount Olympus, the I think the steepness is similar in some parts, but more short-lived. So it's not like I think, and I haven't done TIMP, so I'm estimating from how I've talked to people about it, but like Olympus, for example, is a pretty sustained, very steep climb. And this course has enough variation that the only time that it's like really steep is that Mount Baldy summit and a couple other small ridges where it's like really steep for a little bit, but it's not sustained for so long. And the climb coming out of American Fork Canyon, is the longest sustained with no downhill in it, but it's like a chiller climb and it's not as technical. In terms of rock technicality, I don't think it's as technical as some of the other summits that I've done. But the only place that I remember it being like annoyingly rocky is the final push up to Hidden Peak, on the way up and therefore on the way down, but it's switchback, so it's still not that bad. And there's no like places where you would feel like you're scrambling at all or having to grab onto rocks with your hands to get up and over stuff. So I wouldn't worry overall about the technicality. Um, Certainly not like a push, summit push for, multiple miles. It's just that it's a lot of steep terrain on kind of like dusty, rocky trail, but not like I'm climbing on my hands and knees and I have to like be on a ridge or something like that. The ridge on Mount Baldy is beautiful. It's like actually pretty wide open. So,
And then one more question. Speaking
mhm.
of ridges and descents, are the descents real ankle breakers? Do you recommend lower stack shoes? Any helpful tips would be awesome.
Yeah, okay. I do think the descent coming down Mineral Basin basically into American Fork Canyon is can be an ankle breaker kind of spot. Maybe I'm exaggerating it. I just remember it being like you were very careful with your footing throughout and there's like kind of bigger rocks there. I don't, it depends. I mean, shoes are so variable by person that I tend not to recommend very specific shoes for things because it depends on what you're comfortable in. But what I do recommend for people that are worried about ankles is taping your ankles if you can. There's a couple of different methodologies, but I do one where I kind of wrap around my ankle bones from one side under my heel up to my ankle bone on the other side a couple times with tape and then wrap it around the top to make sure it stays. And that has helped a bunch. It just need a little bit extra stability, but really, if you're paying attention, I think you'll be fine. But it is a place where I have seen people roll their ankles, go down, hurt their knees, etc. So do be careful, but I wouldn't put it past anything else that you would have done running trail training unless you were only running on very smooth trails in California or something. But it's definitely that place is the most tricky spot. Other than that, there's a lot of service road running, which can be rocky again, but not quite as bad. Yeah, but it's really that one section. It's like 2 to 3 miles in Mineral Basin, or I guess American Fork. It's outside of Mineral Basin, going down to American Fork Canyon.
Awesome. It looks like we have two more comments. Somebody kind of following up on what you were talking about with everyone has a different preference for footwear, but one person asked if there's a common trail footwear for this course. Um, I'm happy to answer that question too, but it's preference
Mm.
based. But if you want to talk a little bit about that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is preference based, but I personally don't think this is a course where you'd be wearing like a Adidas Terrex like carbon plated super shoe. I think this is more of a course where you'd be wearing a durable, more comfortable, well lugged shoe. Again, totally preference based. Some shoes that I know that people have worn that have done well in this course. Um, are I love like the On Cloud Ultra Pros have been really successful. La Sportiva Prodigio Pros, people love. Hoka Tectons, I know people have used, which I didn't, those have a carbon plate, but I don't think that, it's like, I would just go for more of like a comfortable, sturdy shoe than a speed shoe because the speed, it's not like you're running fast trails that the speed will give you that much return. You're really just managing climbing and descending in a stable way. But yeah, Sarah, if you have thoughts on that, I'm open to any other ideas.
Totally. I think you nailed it. I think that's great. Yeah, that's
Great.
awesome.
Awesome.
And yeah, and then one more question. People are loving all your answers. If you're a party pace runner, love that. But have put in the work, is it realistic to finish, or are the finishers more experienced, faster runners?
Great question. I think it's totally realistic to finish. And you just have to prepare and believe in that. And I don't know exactly your specific pacing, but there's 13 hours out there, and I can switch show in a second. Maybe if we get, is it? No, maybe not. I'll get there in a second. I'll show up the end, and they have it online too. There's like the aid station cutoff times, and I had them on some of these slides of where they are on different aid stations. So you can check in when you're running how you're doing against those cutoffs. But because this is a hiking heavy course, I think with the right like focus, obviously don't just be like sitting down on rocks for long periods of time. I think that would probably eat up some time. So if you're moving with intentionality, I think you would be surprised by what your body can accomplish out on this course. So certainly possible as a party pace runner to finish, but yeah, I think experienced runners will be the ones that can like push pace and know where they're switching from running and trying to run really aggressively up some of these climbs that a lot of people will be hiking, but you can totally hike this course and still finish this race.
Awesome. I think we can move on. The person asked that question also mentioned that she's scared of the sweeper. Do you want to speak to that?
Scared of the sweeper. The sweeper could be fun. They might bring treats along. So all it really is all the attitude that you take into the experience. So I would say just bring in your attitude, know your goals, and try to race in accordance with your own plan, and it can't really go wrong. So
Perfect.
awesome. All right, I will jump into a little bit more. Sorry. First, I'll talk about UTMB qualification system. Then I'll get into some thoughts on preparation. If anyone has questions on this, Sarah, there might be some technical things on these that I'd be curious if people have specific questions on. But at a high level, if you're interested in racing Chamonix, Chamonix is the finals, the UTMB finals that happens in August every year, and there's different distances. The 50k equivalent distance would be what's called CCC. And you can enter that race in three different ways. One is a lottery entry So you can get running stones by running UTMB series events. Each running stone is an entry into a lottery, and you can apply it to if you have one of these running stones, you can apply it to this OCC is the 50k version, the CCC is the 100k version. You could apply it to the OCC race, and if you win the lottery, you are into that race, which is super exciting. You can get direct entry by placing in the top three of a World Series event, or the top 10 of a World Series major, which Speedgoat's not a major, but in general, there's a few different majors that you could place top 10 in. Or your index, your UTMB score that you get from completing races could be high enough that where you could also get a direct entry. So it's totally possible that you would place like fifth at some UTMB World Series event, but it's really high competition, and your UTMB score ends up being high enough that you still can enter directly anyways. So Speedgoat works with that by if you finish Speedgoat, you'll get two running stones, so two entries into a lottery. If you want to use it, and you have 24 months to apply those two stones. However, I believe they'll stay in your account for forever, but you just have to have at least one stone in the last 24 months to apply them to the lottery entry for any given year. I think it's typically done in January. Maybe it's in December or January for the World Series that will happen in August of that year. Yeah, any questions on trying to get towards the World Finals with running stones or anything like that? Speedgoat. Someone just mentioned this was something that they were interested in hearing, so I made sure it's on there. But if you have any questions, UTMB site can be pretty helpful with it. But I understand that it can also be kind of confusing. The rules have changed a few times, so some things might be have outdated information.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing this. I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anybody has
Awesome.
any, feel free to drop them in and we'll follow up.
Sounds good. Okay.
Oh, sorry, someone did just put one in. So
Okay,
before I
great.
can move
No
on,
worries. Yeah.
how many stones do most people need to get into the 100-mile race?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know if I say off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure I read something in quickly pulling the slide together that it was like 10. About 10 running stones is like where it becomes more likely. So it is kind of a lot, but you can bank these running stones up over time, and then but you do have to apply them all towards one race, I believe. Um, yeah, so kind of a lot. I think it's pretty hard. But Sarah, you might know better. It might be worth looking up online too.
Totally. You can totally, or you can email athlete services and we can give you a total breakdown. But yeah, it is competitive just because it's such the races in Chamonix are so beautiful and so cool. But it's worth trying more if you ever want to. And then another good question from another participant is, what is your favorite UTMB race?
Oh, like UTMB World Series race across the board. Great question. Okay, well, it's this
Yes.
is gonna sound horrible. I mean, I can't lie. My favorite one is the actual UTMB finals that I've done. I did it last August in Chamonix. It's just hard to put into words how special that environment is with so many people in one spot loving the sport and how beautiful Chamonix is. So I do think it's a great goal to have if you want to work towards getting to the finals. It's a really great event to be a part of. Without not counting the actual finals, I haven't done a lot of international ones, although it'd be fun and I would love to. Locally, there's a new one at Snow Basin that I haven't done because it's brand new, but I'm pretty excited about it. So that's pretty cool. And then I think canyons I've done, and it's a similar, like very great experience because it's the Western States course or very similar to the Western States course. So the environment's really great. Auburn's a really cool town, and yeah, it's just also a pretty high caliber race with the golden tickets going on there. So that's another one that's been really fun. But I think there's so many now around the world that maybe it's a good opportunity to go race a destination and make it a travel vacation, and then where you run and then enjoy being there for the rest of the time. That's kind of what I'm eyeing now for doing in the future for some of these races. Sarah, do you have a favorite? I feel like you would know better.
Oh, yeah, there's so many good ones. I'm looking forward to going to Whistler this year.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, I think that it's just beautiful there. So yeah, I think that one will be amazing. But there's so many and it's hard to choose. But if you're
Yeah.
going, I'll follow you, okay? To any of the races.
Yeah, pick the destination, and then I feel like you can't go wrong. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna get a little bit into some planning things. So I think a big part of succeeding on a course in general, but particularly a course like this, is having a clear race plan. It just makes you feel more mentally prepared, and it also helps you adapt if anything is going wrong. So I use what I call a crew sheet. I've used this for races everywhere from 50Ks up to over 100 miles. And this is filled out as an example for Speedgoat. I think it's highly adaptable, so not everyone will plan like me. Maybe you're not a spreadsheet person or you just like different fields, whatever. But I do think it's helpful to have something like this just to understand how long different aid stations are, when you can see your crew, the ascent, the descent, and then most importantly, I think getting a sense of how long something will take you. Can be a bit of an art. I know pacing can be really hard. One of the ways that I have found it to be useful is I will like find someone who I think is a similar runner to me who has done a course before and look at their Strava and see where they were at different points. That's a really helpful way to get idea of pacing. Another great way is if you're like you said, a party runner, looking at the cutoff times and pacing a little bit off of those cutoff times, giving yourself a little bit of buffer can help. The main idea behind that is not that you have a perfect pace that you're trying to follow, but mainly so that you can plan how much fuel and hydration you want for that amount of time between those aid stations. So I think these slides will hopefully go out. I have links to this example crew sheet if anyone wants to take a look at it. It's also at Peralta.co/resources. There's a race planning sheet there. This is just to give you a sense of, this is how this would look for this course based on the aid stations that are there. And then I have another section that's probably the most important section that's filling out the fuel and the hydration needs. I typically recommend athletes to try to target 90 grams of carbs an hour. If you're not as familiar with having higher grams of carbs, you can start at a lower amount and then try to work your way up over time. But that usually informs how much fuel I'm carrying on me at the start, how much I tell my crew to give me at Hidden Peak, how much I get at Mineral Basin, etc. Similar with hydration, I think it's helpful to know how much you're trying to get through and where you're going to refill. And then if you're carrying salt pills on you, about how much to have, or if you're using NAC or electrolytes, how you're going to do that. And then heat, I typically have like an ice bandana or something like that. And I'll tell my crew, like, make sure you have the ice bandana so they know to sub that out at different aid stations. So it's really just about planning things that are important to you. Maybe you want to have, a certain glitter shirt that you exchange with someone at a certain point, or you want some extra like Scandinavian swimmer gummies from Trader Joe's. Anything like that, I would put on the sheet so that your crew and you can be on the same page and you have things to look forward to and you know what is happening at each aid station. This is the sheet I mentioned earlier. It's on the UTMB Speedgoat site, so you can go grab this right away, but it's their version of just like the aid station chart. So you know the cutoff times, the cutoffs are at Hidden Peak and Mineral Basin and the tunnel and Hidden Peak too. So these are all the crude aid stations are where there's hard cutoff times. And it also will give you similarly the distances, the distance to the next aid station, all that. Very helpful to look at and get a sense of beforehand. And also not everyone will be like this. I have found it helpful if I have this crew sheet, which has this whole thing on it. I'll take screenshots of it on my phone. And so I can literally just like scroll through as I'm running and see what the next section entails just to help my mind remember what's going on. And if you have any notes you want to write to yourself, it's another good opportunity to do that. Um, all right. I'm also going to talk about mental prep, but was there any questions on anything else on that before I get into that? Okay.
Great. Yes, a couple questions for you. Okay, sorry. Looks like people were asking about if there's going to be ice at the aid stations.
Ooh, there should be.
Yeah,
There was last year, and I would imagine that there still would be.
definitely. It's supposed to be, I mean, it could potentially be warm, given, yeah. And I know some kind of water spray or
They'll
ice.
typically have like people with pitchers that they'll offer to pour on you. And then they'll have ice as well. And if you have crew, it can be really helpful to actually have two ice bandanas so that your crew can have one ready to give to you and they take the one that you've been wearing away from you, but it's not necessary. They can also fill it if you're not rushing through. Yeah, just it's nice to know that they will have at least the crew aid stations, there should be like buckets and buckets of ice. But yeah, hopefully it doesn't melt or anything like that.
Yeah, totally. And then a couple more questions. Cutoff times, do they mean when you need to leave or enter the aid
Ooh.
station?
That's a great question. I'm actually not sure on that one. Sarah, do you know?
I'm not sure either, but we can find out.
I don't want to give people the wrong information.
Same. I will definitely find out. And it looks like Helen, you asked that question, so I will follow up with you. Actually, I think I have your email from the registration, so I will let you know. And if there's anybody else who wants the answer to that question, I'm happy to also add them. Just pop
Awesome.
your name in the chat.
Great. My guess is it would be that you're leaving by that time just from experience in races, but I just don't know for sure. So,
Yeah, same. I will
but
definitely
I
find
would
out.
say assume that it's you have left by that time. That's usually when sweepers cut through.
A couple more questions. Okay. If they're traveling with their family, can all of them take the lift to support at Hidden Peak as part of the crew?
Yes, they should be handing out free lift tickets at the start. So hopefully you'll find someone that's handing them out. If not, I would go to the Snowbird info desk and they should be able to give your family free gondola tickets to get up to the top.
Right answer. And then any special considerations if you don't have a crew?
Great question. If you don't have a crew, I don't think it's that big of a problem. I know we always talk about crew. It's just that it's nice to have people on the course. So first off, good on you. You're super mentally tough. But they should have everything that you need at the aid stations. There's really no difference between having the crew besides just seeing your people and having them help you sub that out really quickly. I guess the only consideration that is notable is that crew allows you to bring things that are you've trained with that are specific to you. So if you know that you like, a certain kind of gel instead of knack products, then your crew can bring that for you or extra goodies. So your only consideration there is just know that the look ahead at what they have at aid stations and make sure you're comfortable with what that would be. And I believe there could be drop bags maybe, or you could get to the top, or maybe you can give someone a drop bag. I'm not sure if you need something else. But I would say that you have all the fuel and hydration that would be available to you still. It's just that it's not going to be anything that's like unique to you that you planned ahead of time.
Okay. And then there was another question about that. So I think you fairly well answered that. Good luck flying solo, Danielle. That's impressive.
For
And
sure.
then it looks like, thank you, Helen. The spectator guide said that for the gondola rides, it's free before 10:30 a.m. So you will have to pay after that. So go find a crew member before 10:30. As Elena mentioned, you can go into the athlete services tent at registration and they should definitely be able to help you.
Mhm.
Um, and then a question about climbing. If it's the most climbing in a race that you've done, what is key prep for this? How much climbing should you have prior to this event to feel successful?
Ooh, okay, that's a good question. I mean, I don't think there's any certain magic number in terms of climbing that you should have done, but I do think it's helpful to have done a lot of like hiking, and like power climbing. If you live in a place where you have access to mountains, I was typically doing long runs with like 6 to 7K of vert on the weekends, to make sure that I was getting at least, half of that into a day. My typical rule with distance and climbing is that you don't have to mimic it entirely. It's like that, it's the race day for a reason. You'll push yourself on that day, but it's helpful to maybe have a weekend, like even this upcoming weekend is, I think, 2 weeks out from the race. Could be a good opportunity to do a day where you do 6 to 7K one day and 4 to 5K the following day, and you're like mimicking that race experience over 2 days or over 3 days, to adjust your body. But I don't think you need to have like a certain amount of climbing consistently for weeks and weeks on end, especially with it coming up now. You'll get through it no matter what. It's just helpful to know what that feels like. And then, yeah, I think other ways, if you don't live in a place where you have access to mountains where you can climb that much vert, even doing like hilly, like uphill treadmill runs, it's kind of boring, or like uphill repeats on a street can be helpful. But climbing is an interesting thing because for some people doing a ton of climbing helps, and I mean for most people do a ton of climbing helps, but also just being durable on your feet will help a lot. So if you have, lots of time on your feet because you're doing huge hikes and like you did a through hike or something, or you did long runs on the weekends and then kind of walked all day one day, I think that can help a lot. I would think more in terms of time on your feet than you even have to think about in climbing. It helps for sure. It's just I don't want to say there's like a perfect number.
Great. Thank you. That's really helpful. A couple more things. I wanted to follow up on the ice question. I asked one of the race directors, and he said we will definitely have cooling products and we can accommodate ice bandanas, but we won't be dumping ice on you.
Got it.
Just some clarification. Okay. And then another question is what points of the race should my crew show up to, in your opinion?
Mm. Okay, good question. Up to them, of course, but I think all of the crewed spots are awesome to be at. So Hidden Peak, great place to hang out. It's really motivating to see them at the top of the first climb. It's really motivating to see them coming through the tunnel, which is right below Hidden Peak. So basically, if they're taking the gondola up, they will be able to see you at Hidden Peak and the tunnel super easily. So I think if they can be at all of those places, it's great. If they don't make it a tunnel and they're just at Hidden Peak, I also think that's fine. And then one thing to note too, which is a little bit minor but can just be nice, is that that very first climb after the start's kind of crazy because there's so many people. But then you do that kind of traverse back across, and it's not an official aid station or even like a crew spot, but people can totally hike up just a tiny little bit, and like they're right under the gondola or somewhere around there, and they'll be able to see you. And it just can be nice to see your crew early on before they have to take the gondola up, and they can give you a little bit of smile and get you kind of calm before you're doing this big climb. So it's just like a sneaky spot that a lot of people forget about, is that you can just kind of hike straight up from the finish, not very far, and they'll see you at like mile 2 or 3 as you're getting into it.
There's a question about driving distance between each point. We can definitely give you solid details on that from the operate ops team. So, Jose, if you want to, I will email you. I will email you exact details about that, just so, yeah, I don't have to take up the time, but I will send them to you about the distance between stations and where you're allowed to go and actually have access for people.
Yeah, in general, there's no car access. I think it's just by the gondola. But
Yes.
yeah.
And there's certain aid stations there is no access to even from gondola. So yeah, I will be we could definitely be more clear about that for you.
Yeah, and the crew
Um,
can you can see them on like the places where your crew can show up for the aid stations is just these X's over here. So Hidden Peak, Tunnel, Hidden Peak 2, and the finish. So great places for your crew to be though, because they're easy access usually.
Another question, is the course clearly marked? I know the trails can get a bit confusing.
Yes, the course is clearly marked. I've never really had an issue with it. It's still helpful to download the GPX if you have a watch that will beep at you. There's no harm in that, but I have found the course to be clearly marked, and then it's pretty hilarious how if you go there on a day that's not Speedgoat and you try to run some of these trails, you're like, I have no idea where I'm going. It is pretty hard, but for somehow they make it on race day, it is pretty clearly marked.
Cool. And then one more question. Any thoughts on bug spray? Good question.
Ooh, good question. Um, I don't have strong thoughts on that. I haven't done it, and I haven't really been too bothered by bugs. But if you really hate bugs, I don't think it could be a bad idea. Sunscreen also is another thing to think about because you're out there for a long time and it's very exposed. So yeah, good things to think about for sure. I remember putting on sunscreen at a couple different aid stations to reapply. Same thing could happen with bug spray. I just haven't done it personally.
Great.
Awesome. Okay. Quick wrap up then on mental prep, before wrapping up, I guess. I just have a few thoughts on this just because I have found this for myself and for athletes I've coached to have been like one of the most important parts of preparing for any race, but specifically hard races. So I'll just talk through a few things that have been helpful, and where on the course some of these things might come up. But first is I have found it helpful to just look back on your training block and write down, like actually name all the negative self-talk that you've had, if at all, around, I feel like all of us have had it at some point in our training block around, I didn't do this or I could have done this better. And then reframe each of those points into the positive example of like, well, I did this despite XYZ happening in my life, or I trained for this really hard race when I live in a place that's hard for me to do that, or something like that. Just reframe the negative into the positive. I think it gives you a lot of power over your own story and the resilience you've had. And that kind of leads directly into what we call resilience data points, or sometimes I call it my cookie jar. Is just listing out all the hard things I've done, whether it be previous races or moments in training, or even just hard things that have happened in life. And then you can pull from those when the race gets hard. I did this, I can definitely do this now. And then I think something that's very important is what I call scenario planning. So it's writing down in advance of this race everything that you think could happen, good or bad, and pre-planning your response to that. So if you cramp, what are you going to do? If you feel like you're bonking, what are you going to do? It could be I'm taking in another 30 grams of fuel right there, or I'm cramping, I'm taking salt pills, or I don't think I can do it. Okay, I'm gonna say ground myself in the moment, like just keep moving, like one more mile, whatever it is. Come up with your mantras. Think through how you're going to respond to events before they happen, so that when you're in the moment, experience one of these lows, which will happen. It's not like an if, it's a when you'll feel bad about something. You already know how you want to get through that and how you want to respond, and it helps big time. Some places where I think this is really applicable that are hard parts of the course, we kind of talked about it with the DNFs in Mineral Basin, but that Baldy Summit push right after Mineral Basin, I think scares people, especially because it's a like up from Mineral Basin and then a descent and then a very steep uphill push. Just remember to stay in it mentally, like just stay where you are with it. It's a big climb, but I also think it's really cool. It's like very beautiful, and like how often do you get to do like this really high climb above everything else around you? And it's also in the grand scheme of things like relatively short. So that's a hard part. I think people can get psyched out about before they get there. The American Fork Canyon low point, I do think is hard because it's like halfway through the race and you've done this huge descent, and maybe you were hoping the descent would feel better than it actually did. It didn't really feel as much like recovery because it's now hot and it was a little bit technical. And then you have to do this big climb up again. I think people can get overwhelmed that wow, I'm only halfway through this race. Again, stay where you are, just keep moving, prepare for those feelings. And then finally, the second hidden peak climb was what we talked about as well. That climbing the cirque back up the second time late in the race is objectively a very hard thing to do. But don't let yourself get psyched out about it. And think positive thoughts. Remember, like whatever mantra you come up with, just keep repeating that to yourself, and know that in advance, because I think these moments will happen no matter what, and it's just better to be prepared than to have to grapple with it in the moment. Awesome. Any questions or thoughts on that?
No questions on that,
Great.
but there was a question about the 50K time limit. Um,
Yeah, 13 hours.
yeah, so I think some people were saying that they saw that there's no time limit as long as you hit peak two, like hidden peak two in time. I'm gonna
Oh,
verify
okay.
that and will,
I don't know about that. It does say 13 hours on the
yeah,
website, but I could totally see a race director being a little bit chiller about that, which would be great. So,
yes.
yeah,
Let
I'm not
me
sure. I don't want to promise that.
Yes, same. I don't know the answer for sure, so I want to make sure I don't give you false information. And Helen and Chris, who are wondering about that, if you could just email that email right down there, we will get right back to you on that question.
Awesome. Okay, I'll wrap and look at that. We're kind of at time, but I can maybe take a couple questions if there's anything after this. But yeah, key takeaways, just build a fueling and hydration plan. I think it matters a ton. It will affect probably how you feel for like that to avoid that mineral basin bonk DNF. If you're taking care of your body, I think you can really accomplish whatever you want to on this course. Also, think about a cooling plan just because I do think it can get a little bit of hot and exposed out there. And then I mentioned this before, don't stress too much about the pack's pace at the beginning. I think a lot of people go out really hard. Just find your own steady rhythm, let people pass them. Just keep telling yourself that you'll get them, you'll come back on them eventually. And if you're staying steady, I think you will. Everyone will struggle on this course at some point. Um, Nothing will come easy, so mentally do prepare for that. There's no section that's a pure ascent and no section that's a pure descent. There's going to be a few ups and downs along the way, so just go with the flow of the course. You might again, like with Baldy, you see the summit and then you go down again before you go up. Just prepare for that. You'll get through it all. And then there are those five hard cutoffs across 13 hours. Maybe that's, we'll check on that for sure, especially for the last part of the race. They are at all the crude aid stations. So Hidden Peak, Mineral Basin's not crude, I guess, Tunnel and Hidden Peak again. So just be aware of that. It can be helpful for setting, if you go through that planning worksheet that I showed you or anything similar to that, it can be helpful just noting that to help plan your pacing. And then you can kind of check in as you're going to see how you're feeling on it. But yeah, this course is hard. I'm not gonna lie. It's like a really hard course, and no one's. I mean, they advertise that too. It's quite a lot of climbing, but it's so rewarding. And I think everyone who I've coached who has done this, and myself included, feel that when you're done with it, you're like, wow, I have such a deep appreciation for the mountain. If you ever go ski there again, you see the mountain entirely differently. So enjoy it. When in doubt, I would say just keep going, stay present, no matter the pace. I think it's a lot easier to get stressed about how fast you're moving when you're used to running in general on less steep terrain, and it's hard for everyone. So just yeah, enjoy it, and yeah, you'll learn. I think you'll learn a lot from a race like this.
Great. One last question, it looks like, and I'll wait for anybody else to just quickly type, but I know we're at time. So debating if I need a blade for extra hydration, thoughts on that?
Mm. It's possible. I'm not gonna say it's not. I think it actually you might want more hydration, particularly between Hidden Peak. And Mineral Basin. However, with that extra aid station that they're saying there is at the bottom of American Fork Canyon, you might not need it. So it depends on how much water you're drinking. So maybe look at your timing and see how long there's going to be if you want to carry extra hydration. But it is a course where I think having extra hydration, particularly if you struggle with that and you need a lot of water, could be helpful. So it could be a useful part of your strategy.
Great. I think that is all of the questions covered, and we are at time. So, at this point, Elena, that was amazing. Any last things that you want to say? And Harriet, thank you so much for translating for us. Amazing. And we're looking forward to seeing you all there. And thank you so much for joining today. And yeah, well, I'll be sending out the links for this webinar, and you can watch it as many times as you need and hear Elena in your head when you're training.
Yeah, thank you all. Good luck. Really, have a blast. It'll be fun.